The stars were dying across the galaxy, and nobody could stop it. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant, watching the emergency signals flood his communication screens. Red warnings blinked everywhere. Each message told the same terrible story. Another star system had gone dark. Another civilization had vanished without a trace. "Captain, we're getting another distress call," said Communications Officer Tony Garcia. His voice was tight with worry. "This one's from the Kepler-7 system. The Valorian Council is under attack." Morrison walked over to the main display screen. The Valorians were old, wise aliens who had kept peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. If they were calling for help, things were very bad. "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The screen flickered and a blue-skinned Valorian appeared. His large eyes were full of fear. Behind him, explosions lit up the sky. "This is Council Leader Vexen of Kepler-7. Our defenses are failing. The machine ships are everywhere. They're stripping our world bare. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. The Kitherans are coming for everyone." The transmission cut to static. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Bennett, Morrison's second-in-command, stepped beside him. "Sir, that's the 17th system this month." "The reports are all the same. These Kitherans show up with massive ships, destroy everything, and take all the metal and resources." Morrison nodded slowly. He had been reading those reports, too. Each one made his stomach turn. Entire planets reduced to empty shells. Billions of people just gone. "What do we know about these Kitherans?" Morrison asked. Chief Science Officer Dr. Peter Kane pulled up data on his tablet. "Not much, sir. They appeared in the Outer Rim about 6 months ago. All we have are fragments from destroyed ships and survivor reports. They seem to be machines, or at least part machine. Their ships are huge, and their technology is advanced." Morrison looked at the star map on the main screen. Red zones marked where the Kitherans had attacked. The pattern was clear. They were moving inward toward the center of the galaxy, toward human space. Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez appeared on the bridge. "Captain, I've been monitoring long-range sensors. We're picking up some strange energy readings from the direction of Kepler-7. "Show me," Morrison said. Rodriguez brought up the sensor display. Strange pulsing signals appeared on the screen. They were unlike anything Morrison had ever seen. "Those readings are massive, sir," Rodriguez explained. "Whatever's making them has to be the size of a small moon." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Earth Command had ordered all human ships to stay in defensive positions around human colonies. They wanted to protect what they had. But Morrison knew that hiding wouldn't work forever. If the Kitherans were as powerful as the report suggested, they would reach human space eventually. "Mr. Garcia, try to contact Earth Command," Morrison ordered. Garcia worked at his station for several minutes. Finally, he shook his head. "No response, sir. Too much interference. We're on our own out here." Morrison looked around at his crew. The Valiant was a destroyer built for patrol and defense. She carried 180 crew members and had enough firepower to handle pirates and small threats. But against something that could destroy entire civilizations? Morrison wasn't sure. "Sir," said Navigator Linda Hayes, "Kepler-7 is only 2 days away at maximum jump speed. If the Valorians are still fighting, maybe we could help somehow." Morrison considered this. His orders were clear. Stay in human space. Protect the colonies. But those orders were made before anyone knew about the Kitherans. Before anyone knew that something was destroying the galaxy. "Dr. Williams, what's the crew's condition?" Morrison asked the ship's doctor. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Karen Williams checked her medical reports. "Everyone's healthy and ready for duty, sir. Morale is good, though the crew is worried about these Kitheran reports." Morrison made his decision. "Mr. Hayes, plot a course for Kepler-7, maximum jump speed." "Sir?" Bennett looked surprised. Our orders were to protect human interests," Morrison replied. "If these Kitherans are really unstoppable, then human space won't be safe much longer anyway. We need to know what we're facing." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Morrison could see the worry in their eyes, but also determination. They were military people. They understood duty. "Besides," Morrison added, "the Valorians helped establish first contact with humanity 200 years ago. We owe them." "Course plotted, sir," Hayes reported. "Chief Rodriguez, how are our engines?" Morrison asked. "Running perfectly, Captain." "We can make the jump whenever you're ready." Morrison sat down in his captain's chair. "All hands, this is the captain. We're changing course to investigate the situation at Kepler-7. We may be going into danger, but we need to understand what's threatening the galaxy. Everyone stay alert and do your jobs. That's all we can do. He closed the communication channel and looked at Bennett. Sound general quarters. I want all departments ready for anything. The ship's alarm began to sound and crew members hurried to their stations. Morrison watched his people work. They were good people, trained and professional, but they had never faced anything like this. Jump in 30 seconds, Hayes announced. Morrison gripped the arms of his chair. Take us out, Mr. Hayes. The stars stretched into lines and the Valiant disappeared into hyperspace. They were heading toward a battle that might already be lost, to face an enemy that had destroyed 17 civilizations. Morrison hoped they weren't flying to their deaths. But someone had to find out what the Kitherans really were. Someone had to see if they could be stopped. And right now, the Valiant was the only ship in position to try. As the ship traveled through hyperspace, Morrison thought about Earth, about the colonies, about all the human families who had no idea that something terrible was moving toward them across the galaxy. The Valorians had called for help. Morrison intended to answer that call, even if it meant facing the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. In 2 days, they would drop out of hyperspace at Kepler 7. Then they would learn the truth about the Kitherans. Morrison just hoped they would survive long enough to tell someone what they found. The Valiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 7 system, and Captain Jake Morrison immediately knew they were too late. Where the planet Kepler 7 should have been green and blue, it was now a dull gray sphere. Massive ships the size of cities floated around it, connected to the planet by enormous tubes. Morrison watched in horror as streams of metal and rock flowed up through those tubes into the alien vessels. My God, whispered Lieutenant Commander Lisa Bennett. They're eating the planet. Captain, said Communications Officer Tony Garcia, his voice shaking. I'm picking up weak transmissions from the surface. Some Valorians are still alive down there. Morrison stared at the main screen. The Kitheran ships were unlike anything he had ever seen. They looked like someone had built cities out of black metal and then taught them to fly. Each one was at least 5 kilometers long, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. How many ships? Morrison asked. Tactical Officer Alex Parker worked at his console. 37 large vessels, sir, plus maybe 100 smaller ones. The small ones are about our size. Morrison did quick math in his head. The Valiant was 400 meters long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small asteroid. If the Kitheran small ships were the same size, they still outnumbered him 100 to 1. Sir, said Chief Science Officer Dr. Peter Kane, I'm reading some very strange energy signatures. The large ships are generating massive electromagnetic fields. I think that's how they're stripping the planet. Any sign they've detected us? Morrison asked. Parker checked his screens. Not yet, sir. We dropped out pretty far from the main fleet. Morrison studied the tactical display. The Kitheran ships moved in perfect formation like a school of fish. Every movement was precise and coordinated. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Suddenly, alarms began ringing on the bridge. Contact, Parker announced. 12 small ships breaking off from the main fleet. They're heading right for us. So much for not being detected, Bennett said. Morrison stood up. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. The bridge lights dimmed to red and the crew moved with practiced efficiency. Morrison had drilled them on this hundreds of times. But facing real alien warships was very different from training exercises. Mr. Garcia, try to establish communication, Morrison ordered. Garcia worked at his station. Trying all standard frequencies, sir. Wait, I'm getting something. A new voice filled the bridge. It was flat and emotionless, like a computer speaking. Unknown vessel. You will identify yourselves and submit to processing. Resistance will result in termination. Morrison looked at Bennett. Processing? I don't think we want to find out, she replied. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Valiant, Morrison said into his communication system. We demand that you stop your attack on Kepler 7 immediately. There was a pause. Then the alien voice returned. Species classification unknown. Technology level primitive. Category biological infantry class 3. You will submit to processing or be eliminated. Morrison felt anger rise in his chest. We will not submit to anything. Leave this system now or we will defend ourselves. Another pause. This one was longer. Incorrect response detected. Beginning pacification protocols. The communication cut off, sir, Parker said. The 12 ships are accelerating toward us. They'll be in weapons range in 4 minutes. Morrison sat back down in his captain's chair. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders. He could see fear in their eyes, but also trust. They believed he would get them through this. The problem was Morrison wasn't sure he could. Mr. Hayes, take us toward that asteroid field, Morrison ordered. Best speed. Aye, sir, Navigator Linda Hayes replied. And the Valiant began moving. Chief Rodriguez, I need everything the engines can give us, Morrison called to engineering. You got it, Captain, came Rodriguez's voice over the comm. Morrison watched the Kitharan ships on the main screen. They were gaining on the Valiant, but they were still moving in that perfect formation, like they were following a program. Dr. Williams, are you ready for casualties? Morrison asked the medical officer. Sickbay is prepared, sir, Dr. Karen Williams replied. Morrison studied the tactical display. The asteroid field was dense, full of rocks and debris. The Valorians must have been mining it before the attack. Maybe he could use that. Mr. Parker, what can you tell me about their weapons? Morrison asked. Scanning now, sir, Parker replied. It looks like they're using some kind of plasma cannon, designed to disable rather than destroy. I think they want to capture us alive. That made sense. The aliens had called it processing. They probably wanted to study humans before killing them. How long until they're in range? Morrison asked. 2 minutes, sir. Morrison made his decision. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to face an enemy that has destroyed 17 civilizations. They think we're just another primitive species to be processed. Let's show them how wrong they are. He closed the channel and looked at his crew. The Kitharans fight like machines. Perfect coordination, perfect formation. But machines are predictable. We're not. The first plasma bolts lit up space around the Valiant. Morrison felt the ship shake as near misses sent energy waves across their hull. Evasive maneuvers, Morrison ordered. Random pattern. Hayes began flying the ship in an erratic pattern, diving and climbing through 3 dimensions. The Kitharan ships tried to follow, but their formation programming made them slow to adapt. Return fire, Morrison ordered. Parker launched missiles at the pursuing ships. 2 of them exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Direct hits, Parker reported. 2 enemy vessels destroyed. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Maybe they had a chance after all. But then 10 more Kitharan ships broke away from the main fleet. Sir, Garcia said, I'm receiving another transmission from the aliens. Put it through. The same emotionless voice filled the bridge. Unexpected resistance detected. Increasing pacification force. You cannot escape processing, Morrison laughed. We'll see about that. The real battle was just beginning. The Valiant twisted through space like a wounded bird, dodging plasma fire from 22 Kitharan ships. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his chair as another. Near miss shook the hull. Hull. Integrity at 85%, reported Chief. Engineer Sam Rodriguez over the comm. System. Morrison watched the tactical display. The alien ships were learning. They had started in perfect formation, but now they were spreading out, trying to surround his ship. Their movements were still too precise, too calculated. Mr. Parker, target the lead ship, Morrison ordered. Full missile spread. Tactical Officer Alex Parker's fingers flew over his controls. Missiles away. 6 missiles streaked toward the nearest Catharian vessel. The alien ship's defense systems activated, shooting down 4 of them, but 2 got through, exploding against the ship's hull. The vessel shuddered but kept coming. Their shields are strong, Parker reported, but not perfect. Morrison studied the enemy formation. The aliens were trying to box him in, forcing him toward an area of space with no cover. It was a good strategy, but it was also predictable. Mr. Hayes, take us into that debris field, Morrison ordered. Navigator Linda Hayes looked at her screen. Sir, that field is full of metal fragments. Our shields won't last long in there. Neither will theirs, Morrison replied. The Valiant dove into the debris field, metal fragments bouncing off the ship's shields. The Catharian ships followed, but their larger size made them slower to maneuver between the floating rocks. Morrison had an idea. Mr. Parker, can you target some of those larger debris pieces? Parker understood immediately. Yes, sir. If I blow them up at the right time, do it. Parker waited until 3 Catharian ships were close to a large piece of metal wreckage. Then he fired. The explosion sent thousands of metal fragments flying in all directions. 2 alien ships took heavy damage and 1 was destroyed completely. Excellent work, Morrison said. Keep using the environment against them. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Bennett studied her tactical board. Captain, they're adapting faster than I expected. Look at their formation. Morrison looked at the main screen. The remaining Catharian ships had stopped following their perfect patterns. They were starting to move more randomly, copying the Valiant's erratic flight path. They're learning machines, Dr. Peter Kane said from his science station. They study our tactics and adapt. Morrison nodded. That was both good and bad news. Good because it meant the aliens weren't perfect. Bad because they were getting smarter. Sir, said Communications Officer Tony Garcia, I'm picking up weak signals from the planet's surface. Some Valorians are still alive down there. Morrison made a quick decision. Put me through to them. Garcia worked his controls. A crackling voice filled the bridge. Human ship, this is Commander Thalrex of the Valorian Defense Force. We have maybe 50 survivors hiding in underground bunkers. Commander, this is Captain Morrison. We're trying to help, but we're outnumbered. Captain, listen carefully. The Catharian ships have a weakness. Their coordination depends on a command signal from the largest vessel. If you could disrupt that signal, the transmission cut to static. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The largest Catharian ship was still with the main fleet stripping the planet. It was huge, maybe 10 kilometers long. There's no way we can get close to that thing, Bennett said. Morrison studied the battlefield. The debris field extended all the way to the planet. If they could use it for cover. Actually, there might be, Morrison said. But first we need to deal with our immediate problem. The remaining Catharian ships were closing in again. Morrison counted 18 of them, all moving in a loose formation that was much harder to predict. Mr. Parker, how are our weapons? Morrison asked. We've used about half our missiles. Energy weapons are fully charged. Morrison had been a Navy officer before joining the Space Service. He remembered reading about old battles on Earth's oceans, where smaller ships defeated larger fleets through clever tactics. Mr. Hayes, I want you to fly us in a figure-8 pattern through that debris field, Morrison ordered. Sir? Hayes looked confused. Trust me. Mr. Parker, I want you to fire at the debris, not the ships. Create as much chaos as possible. Morrison's plan was simple but dangerous. The Catharian ships were learning to copy human tactics, but they were still machines. They would follow logical patterns. Humans could be completely illogical. The Valiant began its figure-8 pattern weaving through the debris field. Parker fired at random pieces of wreckage, creating explosions and clouds of metal fragments. The battlefield became a chaotic mess of floating debris and energy blasts. The Catharian ships tried to follow, but their programming couldn't handle the complete randomness of Morrison's strategy. 3 ships collided with debris they couldn't see through the clouds of metal fragments. 2 more were damaged by explosions they didn't expect. It's working, Bennett reported. They can't adapt to pure chaos, but Morrison knew this advantage wouldn't last long. The aliens would figure out a counter-strategy eventually. Sir, Rodriguez called from engineering. We're taking a lot of damage from all this debris. Shields are down to 40%. Morrison made another quick decision. All stop, Mr. Parker. Power down all weapons and shields. Sir? Parker looked shocked. Do it now. The Valiant went dark, floating among the debris like just another piece of wreckage. Morrison held his breath as the Catharian ships searched for them. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then one alien ship passed within 100 meters of the Valiant, its sensors scanning the debris field. Now, Morrison whispered. Parker reactivated the weapons and fired point-blank into the Catharian ship. The alien vessel exploded in a brilliant flash. The other Catharian ships immediately turned toward the Valiant, but Morrison was already moving. Mr. Hayes, get us out of here. Best speed toward that nebula. Hayes checked her navigation screen. Sir, that nebula is full of electromagnetic interference. Our systems won't work properly in there. Neither will theirs, Morrison replied. As the Valiant raced toward the nebula, Morrison counted the remaining enemy ships. 8 left from the original 22. Not bad for a single human destroyer. But the real challenge was still ahead. Somehow they had to disrupt the command signal from the main Catharian fleet. Morrison looked at his crew. They were tired, scared, but still fighting. They had proven something important today. Humans might not have the best technology or the biggest ships, but they had something the Kitharans didn't. They had the ability to be completely, brilliantly unpredictable, and that might just be enough to save the galaxy. The Valiant limped into the nebula with 8 Catharian ships in pursuit. Captain Jake Morrison watched the purple and blue clouds swirl around his ship as electromagnetic interference filled the screens with static. Sensors are down to 20%, reported Tactical Officer Alex Parker. The nebula is scrambling everything. Morrison smiled grimly. Good. That means their sensors are having problems too. Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez appeared on the bridge, his uniform dirty with grease and coolant. Captain, we've got damage on 3 decks. Hull breach is sealed, but we lost 2 missile launchers and our long-range communications. Morrison nodded. The Valiant had taken a beating, but she was still flying. How long to make repairs? Give me 4 hours and I can get the missile launchers back online, Rodriguez said. The communications array will take longer. You have 2 hours, Morrison replied. I don't think our friends out there will wait much longer than that. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Bennett studied the tactical display. The 8 remaining Catharian ships had stopped at the edge of the nebula. They were scanning the clouds, trying to find the human vessel. They're being careful, Bennett observed. Smart machines. Morrison walked to the science station where Dr. Peter Kane was studying the nebula's properties. Doctor, tell me about this nebula. Can we use it somehow? Kane pulled up his readings. It's full of charged particles, Captain. The electromagnetic interference is caused by constant electrical storms, very dangerous for ship systems. Morrison looked at the swirling clouds on the main screen. An idea was forming in his mind. What would happen if we could trigger a big electrical discharge? Kane considered this. Well, theoretically, if you had enough energy in the right place, you could create a cascade effect. Like lightning jumping between clouds, and would that damage ships? It would certainly disrupt their electronics, maybe even overload their power systems. Morrison turned to Rodriguez. Chief, do we have any mining charges left? Rodriguez looked surprised. Yes, sir. We have about 20 charges in Cargo Bay 2, standard mining explosives for asteroid work. Morrison's plan was taking shape. Could you modify them to interact with charged particles? Rodriguez thought for a moment. Maybe. If I could adjust their detonation frequency, yes, I think I could make them trigger electrical discharges. How long? Morrison asked. 1 hour, maybe less. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Catharian ships were still waiting at the nebula's edge, but they wouldn't wait forever. Soon they would either come in after the Valiant or call for reinforcements. Mr. Garcia, can you reach the Valorian survivors on Kepler 7? Morrison asked Communications Officer Tony Garcia. Garcia worked at his station, fighting through the interference. I think so, sir. Very weak signal. Put me through. After a few moments, a crackling voice filled the bridge. This is Commander Thalrex. Human ship, are you still alive? We're here, Commander. Can you tell me more about the Catharian command system? The large ships coordinate through a central command vessel. But Captain, even if you could disrupt their communications, you would only delay them. They have backup systems. Morrison had expected this. What about their shields? Any weaknesses? The shields regenerate using electromagnetic fields. If you could overload those fields somehow. Morrison looked at Kane. The scientist nodded. An electrical cascade would definitely overload their shield generators. Commander Thalrex, can your people create a distraction? Draw some ships away from the main fleet? There was a pause. We have 3 small fighters hidden in an underground hangar. They're damaged, but they might fly one more mission. That's all I need, Morrison said. In 2 hours, have your fighters attack the outer ships. Just hit and run. Draw them away from the command vessel. Understood, Captain. But be careful. The command ship has massive firepower. The transmission ended in static. Morrison turned to his crew. You all heard the plan. Chief Rodriguez, get those mining charges ready. Dr. Kane, I need you to map the electrical currents in this nebula. Find me the biggest storm you can. Aye, sir, both men replied. Navigator Linda Hayes looked up from her station. Captain, the Catharian ships are moving. 2 of them are entering the nebula. Morrison looked at the tactical display. The aliens had gotten tired of waiting. Mr. Parker, can you track them through the interference? Barely, sir. They're moving slowly, using active sensors. Morrison had an advantage here. He knew the nebula better than the aliens did. The Valiant had been inside for 30 minutes while the Catharans were just entering. Mr. Hayes, take us deeper into the storm center. Use passive sensors only. The Valiant moved through the swirling clouds like a ghost. The electromagnetic storms crackled around them, but Morrison had learned to read the patterns. The aliens were moving in a search grid, methodical and predictable. "Contact," Parker whispered. "One Catharian ship, 2 kilometers to starboard." Morrison could see the alien vessel on his screen, its lights cutting through the purple clouds. It was scanning systematically, but it hadn't found them yet. "Mr. Parker, when I give the word, fire everything we have at that ship," Morrison ordered. "Then we run." Parker prepared his weapons. "Ready, sir." Morrison waited until the Catharian ship was perfectly positioned. "Fire." Missiles and energy beams lanced out from the Valiant, striking the alien vessel before it could react. The Catharian ship's shields flared and failed. Explosions rippled along its hull. "Direct hit," Parker reported. "She's badly damaged." "Now we go," Morrison ordered. The Valiant dove deeper into the nebula as the other Catharian ship moved to help its damaged companion. Morrison had bought himself more time. An hour later, Rodriguez reported that the mining charges were ready. Kane had found the perfect spot, an area where 3 electrical storms were about to converge. "If we detonate the charges here," Kane explained, "the cascade effect should spread throughout this entire section of the nebula." Morrison studied the plan. It was dangerous. The Valiant would have to get very close to the storm center to place the charges, and they would have to lure the Catharian ships into the trap. "Sir," Garcia reported. "Message from the Valorian fighters. They're ready to begin their attack." Morrison looked at the chronometer. Time to begin the final phase. "Mr. Hayes, take us to the storm center. Chief Rodriguez, prepare to launch those charges." As the Valiant moved through the nebula, Morrison thought about Earth, about all the human colonies that had no idea this battle was happening. If his plan failed, the Kitharans would continue their march across the galaxy. Eventually, they would reach human space, but if it worked— "Sir," Parker said, "all 8 Catharian ships are entering the nebula. They're coming straight for us." Morrison smiled. The hunters had become the hunted. Now it was time to spring the trap. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to show these aliens what happens when they threaten the galaxy. Hold on tight." The final battle was about to begin. The heart of the nebula crackled with energy as Captain Jake Morrison positioned the Valiant at the center of 3 converging electrical storms. Purple lightning danced between the clouds, and his ship's hull hummed with static electricity. "Charges deployed," reported Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez. 20 modified mining explosives spread throughout the storm system. Morrison watched the tactical display as 8 Catharian ships moved through the nebula toward them. The aliens had learned caution after losing so many vessels, but they were still coming. "Mr. Garcia, any word from the Valorian fighters?" Morrison asked. Communications Officer Tony Garcia nodded. "Commander Thalrex reports they're beginning their attack run now." On the main screen, Morrison could see distant flashes of light near Kepler 7. The Valorian fighters were doing their job, drawing attention away from the main fleet. It wouldn't last long, but it might be enough. "Sir," said Tactical Officer Alex Parker, "the Catharian ships are spreading out. They're trying to surround us." Morrison had expected this. The aliens had learned from their earlier mistakes. They were no longer moving in predictable formations. "Dr. Kane, are the storms ready?" Morrison asked. Science Officer Dr. Peter Kane checked his instruments. "The electrical potential is building, Captain. When those charges detonate, the cascade effect should spread for kilometers in every direction." Morrison looked at his crew. They had been through so much in the past few hours. Damaged, outnumbered, cut off from Earth Command, they had still found a way to fight back. They represented the best of humanity. "Lieutenant Commander Bennett, are all departments ready?" Morrison asked. Lisa Bennett checked her status board. "Engineering reports ready. Medical bay is prepared for casualties. All weapons systems online." Morrison stood up from his captain's chair. This was it. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Mr. Hayes, take us out of the storm center. Make it look like we're trying to escape." Navigator Linda Hayes began moving the Valiant away from the prepared position. On the tactical display, Morrison watched the Catharian ships react. They accelerated, trying to cut off the human ship's escape route. "They're taking the bait," Bennett observed. The 8 alien vessels moved into the storm system, their formation spreading out to block every possible exit. They thought they had trapped the Valiant. Morrison waited until all 8 ships were inside the electrical storm area. The Kitharans were so focused on capturing the human vessel that they didn't notice the danger building around them. Now, Chief Rodriguez, Morrison ordered. Detonate the charges. 20 explosions erupted throughout the nebula, each one triggering massive electrical discharges. Lightning jumped from cloud to cloud, creating a cascade of energy that turned the entire area into an electrical storm. The Catharian ships were caught completely off guard. Their shields, designed to handle energy weapons, overloaded instantly when hit by natural lightning. Electrical cascades ripped through their hulls, shorting out systems and causing explosions. Direct hits on all targets, Parker reported with excitement. Their shields are down across the board. Morrison felt a surge of satisfaction, but the battle wasn't over yet. Target the nearest ship. Full weapons. The Valiant's missiles and energy beams struck the helpless Catharian vessel. Without shields, the alien ship was defenseless. It exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the entire nebula. 1 down, Bennett said. 7 to go. But the remaining Catharian ships were already adapting. Their backup systems came online and they began coordinating their attack despite the electrical interference. "Sir?" Garcia called out. "I'm receiving a transmission from the Catharian fleet." Morrison had been expecting this. "Put it through." The emotionless alien voice filled the bridge, but this time it sounded different. Uncertain. "Human vessel, your resistance is unexpected. However, you cannot defeat the full fleet. Surrender now and your processing will be swift." Morrison laughed. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. We don't surrender to anyone. And we're just getting started." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Mr. Hayes, take us toward the planet. It's time to finish this." The Valiant raced out of the nebula with 6 damaged Catharian ships in pursuit. The electrical storm had leveled the playing field. But Morrison knew they still faced long odds. As they approached Kepler 7, Morrison could see the massive Catharian command ship still stripping the planet. It was enormous, easily 50 times larger than the Valiant. But it was also distracted by the Valorian fighter attack. "Mr. Parker, target the command ship's communication arrays," Morrison ordered. "If we can disrupt their coordination..." Parker fired missiles at the huge vessel. The command ship's shields deflected most of them, but a few got through, damaging external equipment. Immediately, Morrison could see the effect. The smaller Catharian ships around the planet began moving erratically, their coordination disrupted. "It's working," Bennett said. "They're losing their connection." But the command ship was turning toward the Valiant now, its massive weapons charging. Morrison realized he had made himself a target. "Evasive maneuvers," Morrison ordered. "Use the planet's gravity well." Hayes dove the Valiant toward Kepler 7, using the planet's gravity to increase their speed. The command ship fired, but its weapons were designed for long-range combat. At close range, the Valiant was too fast and agile. Morrison had one last card to play. "Mr. Garcia, open a channel to all frequencies. Broadcast on every wavelength we have." "Channel open, sir." Morrison took a deep breath. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Valiant. To all civilizations within range of this transmission. The Catharian Empire is not unstoppable. They can be defeated. We have proven it here today." He paused, watching the tactical display as more Catharian ships moved to intercept them. "The galaxy is not defenseless," Morrison continued. "Humanity stands ready to fight. We will not bow to any empire that thinks sentient beings can be processed like raw materials. The age of Catharian expansion ends here." Morrison cut the transmission just as the Valiant's proximity alarms began screaming. 3 Catharian ships were closing fast, and the command vessel was charging its main weapons again. But something was happening on the edge of the system. New contacts were appearing on the sensors. "Sir," Parker said with growing excitement, "I'm reading multiple ship signatures." "Human ships, sir. It's Admiral Helen Carter's battle fleet." Morrison felt a surge of hope. Earth Command had received his earlier messages after all. Help had arrived. 12 human warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately engaged the Catharian fleet. The aliens, already disrupted and damaged, found themselves facing fresh enemies with full weapons and shields. The battle turned quickly. The human fleet, using the tactics Morrison had demonstrated, struck fast and unpredictably. The Kitharans, cut off from their command ship's coordination, couldn't adapt quickly enough. One by one, the alien vessels were destroyed or disabled. The massive command ship, surrounded and outnumbered, finally surrendered when its weapons were destroyed. Morrison watched from the Valiant's bridge as Admiral Carter's flagship approached. The immediate battle was over, but Morrison knew this was just the beginning. Mr. Garcia signaled the fleet. Tell them Captain Morrison requests permission to come aboard and brief them on Catharian tactics. Garcia worked his controls. Admiral Carter responds that she's coming aboard the Valiant, sir. She wants to hear your report personally. Morrison smiled. The galaxy had learned something important today. The Kitharans could be beaten. Humanity had shown the way. Word of the victory would spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations would rally. The unstoppable empire had been stopped by a single human destroyer and its crew. Morrison looked at his bridge crew. They had done the impossible. They had saved not just themselves, but perhaps the entire galaxy. The Catharian Empire's days of easy conquest were over. Humanity had answered their challenge, and the galaxy would never be the same. The stars were no longer dying. Hope had returned to the void.